Last night, Ilhan Omar won her primary election. I want to make that clear, but it was a really way too close for comfort. And you know, there seems to have been some strategic errors made by her campaign that I'm hopeful other progressive incumbents, squad incumbents, will learn from, because we can't afford to lose Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is, and let's pull this up here. These are the results. Ilhan Omar is probably the best representative that we have. And I love Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but I, you know, I don't want to rank anybody, but Ilhan Omar's bravery, you put that up there with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, charitably, you could say they serve different roles, with Ilhan being a little bit better at, I think, like, say, going after war criminals in
Right.
Yeah.
Just keep it up. Yeah, and just so people can see, it was way, way, way too narrow. And the thing about this is that so apparently Ilhan Omar said, I'm not going to debate her opponent, Samuels, declined to debate him. And she spent less on this primary than she did last election cycle. She also opted not to run any ads on television. And this PAC that was behind this guy Samuels, they blitzed TV in the final week in the head of the election.
Samuels had Mayor Fry's endorsement. He had all the Dems' money. He ouspent Ilhan, outraised Ilhan recently. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what more you have to say, but to me, it is one, troubling because it's another in a pattern of these attacks. Samuels implied that Omar was alienating certain communities, particularly Jewish folks, which I think is a smear on Ilhan Omar. And I think it's a smear that is being weaponized against progressives all over the place.
But Ilhan is particularly susceptible to it because of her bravery on speaking out against the Israel lobby and Israeli apartheid in Palestine.
Right.
And because of her status as someone born out of the United States, came here as a refugee, and being Muslim. I mean, straight up, there is bigotry and being a black woman. All of those things intersect in this toxic stew of bigotry that makes her an easy target for these kinds of folks. And so she can't take any race for granted. And I'm not saying that her campaign did, but I do think, and by reports, it seems like they were more focused on door-to-door outreach, but you cannot neglect TV ads. And what is concerning about this is that you just mentioned Jacob Fry there. There are some rumblings, from my understanding, that he might want to primary her in 2024 and also run on a Ilhan Omar is a anti-Semite platform, which is garbage. But AIPAC and the money that they have flooded into Democratic primaries, they got great returns on investment.
Yeah.
So they're going to do this more.
Regardless of what their individual spend in this race was, because my impression is it wasn't as large as they were in some. They've already laid the groundwork against Ilhan. They've been smearing her for years. For the minute she entered the national spotlight, and I don't know. It's something where it was. There's a lot of good in Minnesota. Like, we talk about how difficult it is to be optimistic, but not only do you have Ilhan, who I agree is like just exemplary as far as a squad member goes. You have Robin Wansley, local independent socialist.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's great.
And like you have things like you have victories, and then we also have to run up against a corporate pro-cop sector of Democrats in these urban cities, and it's going to be a huge problem.
Yes.
Because these people are easily swayed by these types of smears and by anti-defund the police talking points. And I don't know, I think all I'm going to say is next time Ilhan's up for re-election, I'm going to be doing a lot more publicity for.
I think a lot of us took it for granted.
I was not expecting this at all. I was not super familiar with Samuels.
And another issue too is that unfortunately, I mean, like she has some allies, I would say, outside of the squad in her state delegation, because as much as some things about Betty McCollum are problematic, but she certainly is a relatively progressive member. But we obviously, I think, also would love to see Amani Badhaso inject some new blood into that district. But unfortunately, closer to Ilhan, there is Dean Phillips, who is a neighboring congressperson, one of the wealthiest members of Congress, a problem solver, and essentially the Gottheimer of the Midwest, a guy who is ready and willing to smear Ilhan just the way that Gottheimer was willing to smear Rashida Tlaib. So.
Yeah.
And then also we've seen the AIPAC, the DMFI influence in member-to-member primaries too, with Andy Levin, a Jewish man, but truly one of the most
Nina
Turner with Chantel Brown, one of the most but with Levin is like one of the most vocal champions for labor in the House, one of the leaders of the charge for unionizing congressional workforces, and lose to Haley Stevens basically, but just because Haley Stevens is a more ardent defender of Israel than Andy Levin was.
But also those, when you're an ardent defender of Israel, it intersects with being anti-labor. I mean, they see that as an opportunity to elect more centrist corporate Democrats, because if your position on Israel is not a progressive position, you also probably have anti-labor views. You probably aren't going to support Medicare for all. Like, it is a really easy way for right-wing money to launder into Democratic primaries as a way to put to tamp down any kind of progressive groundswell on a variety of issues.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is it wasn't about Israel at all. Andy Levin gets money from J Street, other sort of pro-Zionist groups. On the progressive end of that, but AIPAC still saw the need to flood his race with money because of all the other things. And I mean, it's hard to not look at that as just. I think this. I think anybody who takes money from that. Particular wing of Zionist lobbying groups like AIPAC, basically anti-labor, pro-settlement folks. Like, that's the modern Jim Crow wing of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're a supporter of apartheid if that is the case,
and it's just being exported instead of it being here. Yeah, it's literally just like an export of those sensitivities.
It's an extension of white supremacy. I mean, let's be real, and especially with the news of over a dozen Palestinian children being murdered in Gaza and the assault on it, like, Ilhan Omar is needed more than ever in Congress. And I just want to make this point because we were not paying attention to Don Samuels, right? A lot of people aren't paying attention to Don Samuels, but if Jacob Frey jumps in this race in 24, he I think has been vocally fairly pro-Israel. If I'm not mistaken, at the very least, though, he positions himself as a more centrist leader in regards to defund the police because of his role in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. So he was very front-facing on that. He has the publicity because he was the mayor of Minneapolis. And so if there is not a lot of reinforcements provided to Ilhan Omar, and Jacob Frey sees this as an opportunity to run against her in 2 years, like the Israeli hawkish lobby is going to see these results as a real positive to get her out in 2 years with a candidate that has way more publicity than Frey. I
mean, Frey endorsed the candidate, a challenger. I mean, talk about, Democrats not endorsing primary challengers.
A woman of color, no less.
Exactly.
I thought we weren't supposed to do that.
And a man who, accused her of being anti-Semitic. So I think we know which way Frey is going to go on that. He's a political enemy, and it'd be great. And I know, we're in a period of reaction now where the left isn't as powerful in certain areas as it'd be nice to be. And it'd be nice if, Frey was a little bit more challenged than he is, but he's obviously feeling himself a little bit.